My name is Evelyn March. I am 66 years old. The sound of the car door slamming was louder than Lauren's words. I can't stand you anymore, she snapped, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping her from flying apart. Get out, Evelyn! I mean it! The heat from the Savannah afternoon hit me as soon as I stepped onto the pavement. The air shimmered thick with humidity and anger that hadn't yet settled. I looked through the open window expecting her to say something else, anything that sounded like regret. But she just stared straight ahead, jaw tight, eyes hidden behind her sunglasses. The engine roared. Gravel spit from the tires as she pulled away, leaving a pale cloud of dust and the faint scent of her perfume. And just like that, I was standing alone on the side of Highway 17, with no bag, no wallet, and a phone that blinked a single red light before dying completely. For a few seconds, I didn't move. It wasn't shock exactly. It was disbelief, the kind that comes when the world decides to change its rules without warning. I had known Lauren for 15 years. I had watched her marry my son, watched her learn to smile for family photos, watched her slowly decide I was no longer convenient to have around. The sun pressed against my back like punishment. I scanned the roadside, a crooked bus stop sign, a bench splintered down the middle, and the long ribbon of asphalt stretching in both directions. A cicada droned somewhere behind me louder than the blood in my ears. I sat down on the bench because pride doesn't make your knees any younger. My blouse clung to my skin. I wiped my face with a handkerchief I'd tucked into my pocket that morning, more out of habit than preparation. I thought of the air-conditioned restaurant we had left only minutes ago, and how quickly small talk had turned into accusation. Lauren's voice still echoed. You treat Daniel like he's still your little boy. You make us feel like children in our own house. Maybe she was right about that. But there are worse sins than loving your son too much. A pickup truck passed, slowing just enough for the driver to glance at me, one of those quick, cautious looks reserved for the stranded and the possibly unstable. I turned my face away. There's a certain dignity in pretending you meant to be left behind. Minutes stretched. I counted them by the sound of the cicadas and the distant hiss of cars heading somewhere that wasn't here. My throat was dry, and the heat felt personal now, as if the day itself disapproved of me. Then came another sound, steady footsteps, careful but confident. I turned my head. A man in a light gray suit was walking along the shoulder, guided by a white cane that tapped rhythmically against the ground. His hair was silver-trimmed close, and he moved with the precision of someone who trusted his own memory more than his sight. He stopped a few feet from me. "Excuse me," he said, voice even calm. "May I sit?" I nodded before realizing he couldn't see me. "Yes, of course." He eased himself down beside me, resting the cane across his knees. The silence between us was strangely easy. After a moment, he tilted his head slightly toward me. "You've been out here for some time." Long enough, I answered, my voice rougher than I intended. He smiled faintly. "Then I suppose I arrived just in time." I frowned, unsure whether he was joking. "I'm fine," I said. "I just need to figure out how to get home." "Home," he repeated softly, as though testing the word. Then, without turning his head, he said something that made the air shift around us. "Pretend to be my wife. My driver is coming." I stared at him. For a moment, I thought the heat had scrambled his mind or mine. "What did you say?" He straightened his jacket, still facing forward. "You'll understand soon. Please just stand when the car stops. Trust me for a moment." The low hum of an approaching engine grew louder. A sleek black sedan glided toward us and slowed to a stop in front of the bench. Dust curled around the wheels. The driver stepped out and opened the rear door with a small bow. "Mrs. Wilson," he said politely. "Sir, the car is ready." The man beside me, this stranger with the calm voice and hidden eyes, offered his hand. I hesitated, then took it. His grip was firm, warm, steady. I stood brushing the dirt from my skirt. Somewhere in the haze of sunlight and disbelief, I heard myself say quietly, "All right." And together we stepped toward the waiting car. The driver held the door. "Mrs. Wilson," he said, as if the name had always belonged to me. I paused. "That is not my name." The man with the white cane did not turn his head. "For the next few minutes," he said gently, "borrow it." I slid into the back seat. He followed, measuring the space with the cane before folding it across his knees. The door closed. The world softened. "Sir," the driver asked from the front. "Home, yes, James." And slowly, I looked at the back of the driver's neck, the neat line of his collar. "James, I said my name is Evelyn. I am not his wife." "Yes, ma'am." A small smile moved in his voice. "Understood." The man beside me angled his face toward the sound of mine. "Robert Wilson," he said. "I owe you an explanation." "You owe me my purse," I said, "and possibly a ride to a house that is not yours." "Both are possible," he said. "One requires time and a charger. Do you need to call your son?" "My phone is dead," I said, "and I am not ready to hear his voice." "Then we will begin with silence," Robert said. "It is the only luxury no one notices." I let the quiet settle. My breath slowed. My hands were still shaking, and I hid them in my lap. He spoke first. "You were left at a bus stop after a public argument. The details can wait, but the humiliation cannot." "You heard the whole thing." "I heard enough," he said. "Pain has a shape long before it has words." I turned toward him. His glasses caught a sliver of light. His eyes stayed hidden. "Why the performance?" I asked, "and why me?" "Because I recognized a woman who would not beg," he said. "And because sometimes an exit needs a witness." "That sounds like something rehearsed." "It is something learned," he said. "There is a difference." James glanced in the rearview mirror. "Ma'am, there is a charger on your left." I found the cable plugged in the phone and watched the dark screen think about waking. "If you are trying to be kind," I said, "it is working. If you are trying to be clever, I am too tired to clap." "Kindness and cleverness are not enemies," Robert said. "But I will choose the first if it comforts you." "Comfort is a complicated word today." "Then let us try dignity," he said. "It fits more easily." I studied him. He never met my eyes. He spoke toward the space in front of us as if the air could carry meaning better than faces could. "Why ask me to be your wife?" "Because James knows the rhythm of my life," he said, "and strangers drown in questions." You looked like a woman who needed fewer questions. I also looked like a woman who needed her own name. "And you shall keep it," he answered. "Evelyn March. I will not mistake it." "Where are we going, Mr. Wilson?" "Somewhere you can sit," he said. "Somewhere no one can decide who you are but you. Home." James repeated softly and turned down a shaded road. I pressed my palms together. "I should be angry with you." "I expect you to be," Robert said. I intruded on a moment that was not mine. "You intervened," I said. "There is a difference." "I prefer your verb," he answered. The phone flickered alive. A notification stacked itself on the screen, 3 missed calls from Daniel, 1 from Lauren. I turned it face down. "Would you like me to step out when we arrive?" Robert asked. "So you can call privately." "I would like to sit before I fall," I said. "The rest can wait." "Then we agree," he said. "Waiting is sometimes the only honest choice." James cleared his throat. "Sir, the gate." "Thank you," Robert said. "James, would you bring a glass of water to the conservatory and perhaps tea?" "Yes, sir." I shifted toward the door. "Conservatory," I said. "That sounds like glass and quiet." "It sounds like breath," Robert said. "The plants do the talking. I only pay attention." "I owe you a question," I said. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing today," he said. "Tomorrow, perhaps a conversation. And one promise." "What promise?" "That if you feel unsafe, you will say so clearly and we will stop. I prefer consent to courage." I nodded before remembering he could not see the motion. "All right," I said. James parked. We are here. The door opened to a wash of cooler air. Robert did not move until I spoke. Are you certain, I asked, that I am the person you intended to help? I am certain you are the person who was there, he said. And I am certain I do not like leaving people behind. James offered his arm to me with a quiet, practiced kindness. I stepped out, then turned to Robert. I can manage, I said. I know, he answered. But today you do not have to. He unfolded the cane and tapped once, finding the ground with a sure, measured touch. James will guide you in, he said. I will follow. I can guide myself, I said, then softened. But I will let him open the door. That seems fair, Robert said. We moved together toward the entrance, the driver a half step ahead, Robert a half step behind, and me in the narrow space between being carried and standing on my own. The car moved through a stretch of road lined with oak trees, their branches tangled like old hands. I kept my eyes on the man beside me, Robert Wilson, trying to make sense of his calm. He sat perfectly still, one hand resting over the folded white cane, his posture almost ceremonial. When the car slowed, the driver spoke softly. We're home, sir. Thank you, James. Robert turned his face slightly toward me. We've arrived, Mrs. March. I'm not sure why you keep calling it home, I said, my voice low. It's not mine. He smiled, polite but unreadable. Perhaps not yet. But for now, it is safe ground. James opened my door. The air outside was cooler, touched by the faint scent of rain and magnolia. Beyond the iron gates stood a mansion, white columns, long windows, and a porch that looked like it belonged to another century. I expected signs of accommodation for blindness rails markers, something. There were none. Inside, the silence was wide and deliberate. Every step I took seemed to echo too loudly. A hallway opened into a sitting room filled with soft light and symmetry. Not a single item was out of place. A housekeeper might have just left, or maybe she never did. Please, Robert said, gesturing toward a chair. His movements were smooth, confident. Sit down before you decide you've made a mistake. I already have, I said, but I sat anyway. He chuckled quietly. Then we are both guilty of impulse. James appeared again with a tray. Tea, sir. Yes, please. For both of us. The cups rattled faintly as they were set down. I watched Robert reach forward without hesitation. His hand landed exactly on the handle of his cup. He lifted it smoothly without spilling a drop. You move like a man who can see, I said. He turned his head toward me. I move like a man who remembers. That sounds rehearsed. Perhaps, he said lightly. Or perhaps it's the only answer that doesn't frighten people. I let the tea warm my hands. You should have let me go back on that road. I would have found a way home. You would have walked 4 miles in the heat, he said evenly, or waited for a bus that passes every 2 hours. You deserved something better than abandonment. I didn't ask for rescue. No, he said you endured it instead. His words struck too close. I set my cup down. You don't even know me. I know what silence looks like after humiliation, he replied. And I know you were not meant to be left on a curb like forgotten luggage. The room felt smaller. He wasn't wrong, but I hated how easily he saw through me, or thought he did. You sound like someone who collects broken people. I prefer to think I notice them, he said. The rest of the world looks away. James stepped forward. Shall I prepare the guest room, sir? Yes, Robert said. The one facing the garden. I don't need a room, I protested. You need a night to breathe, he said gently. After that, you may leave whenever you wish. I hesitated. The idea of stepping back onto that road into the same heat and silence felt unbearable. Just one night, I said. One night, he agreed. James nodded and left. The echo of his footsteps faded through the hall. Robert leaned back in his chair. You are not the first person this house has given shelter to, but most arrive asking for help. You arrived asking for nothing. That's because I don't trust charity, I said. Good, he answered. Then let us call it hospitality. I glanced around the room again, the gleaming floors, the spotless surfaces, the paintings all perfectly aligned. It was beautiful, too, perfect, almost sterile. Nothing about it spoke of blindness or disorder. "Tell me something, Mr. Wilson," I said. "How does a man who cannot see live in a house that looks like it's been designed for an architect?" He smiled faintly. "Because precision comforts me. I can walk through this house without touching a thing. I know where every corner ends." His confidence unsettled me more than his mystery. He rose, using the cane as a formality, not a need, and extended his hand. "Come," he said softly. "Let me show you the garden before dusk." I followed, still unsure if I wanted to understand him or prove him wrong. As we passed under the tall doorway, the air changed again, filled with the scent of roses and rain-soaked soil. He paused beside me, his expression unreadable behind those dark glasses. Sometimes he said quietly, "Order is the only way to survive chaos." I looked at him then, back at the house that gleamed behind us, perfect to the point of unease. It occurred to me that kindness in the right light could look an awful lot like control. Robert waited until James disappeared down the hall before speaking. "You take it with sugar or lemon?" "Neither," I said. "I stopped adding things years ago. Habit from living alone." He nodded, stirring his own cup with careful, even movements. Silence makes strange company. It starts polite, then grows heavy. "I've learned to ignore it." "That is a kind of strength." He set his spoon down with a soft click. "Tell me about what happened today." I hesitated. "You already seem to know." "I know what I saw," he said. "A woman left standing on the side of a highway, while someone she raised drove away. That is all. The rest I'll leave to your choice." The tea was still too hot, but I drank anyway. "My daughter-in-law thinks I'm controlling. My son thinks she's right. They want me in a retirement community. I told them no. That's all." "That's not all," he said quietly. "No, I admitted it's not. I may have called their house cold. I may have said a few things I shouldn't have, but I didn't deserve to be thrown out like an unwanted bag of groceries." Robert's lips curved slightly. "Strong women frighten people who rely on control." "I'm not strong," I said. "I'm just too proud to show weakness. Pride is the armor of those who've survived love," he replied. "It fits tightly, but it keeps the ribs from breaking." I looked up from the cup. "You talk like a man who's rehearsed that." "I've lived it," he said. "I was married once." She left when my sight began to fade. Said she didn't want to live in the dark. I blinked, unsure what to say. "That must have been hard, losing her." He shook his head. "Losing the illusion that love and loyalty are the same thing that was harder." The words settled between us. I found myself staring at the rim of my cup, tracing it with my thumb. "I don't know what to do with the anger," I said finally. "It sits under my ribs like a stone." "Anger is energy," he said. "If you bury it, it rots. If you use it, it becomes a map. A map to what? To who you are without them." The simplicity of it startled me. For years I had been wife, mother, mother-in-law titles stacked like polite cages. I had never said my own name aloud in a room without someone attached to it. Robert leaned forward slightly, listening as if he could see every word form in the air. "Evelyn," he said, testing it softly. "That name suits you. Firm, but not sharp." The sound of it from his mouth made something inside me unclench. "You barely know me," I said. "I know the silence people carry when they've been misjudged," he said. "It hums. Yours is loud." I tried to laugh, but it caught halfway. "You should have been a teacher. I preferred to be a student," he said. "Of human mistakes. They're more consistent than any textbook." We sat there, the air filled with the faint hum of the ceiling fan. When James returned, Robert lifted his head. "Thank you, James. That will be all." As the door closed again, he turned back to me. "If you decide to stay another night, the guest room is yours. No debt, no pity." I hesitated. "You make it sound easy to trust you." "It isn't," he said. Trust never is, but it is harder to keep pretending the world doesn't surprise you. He stood finding his balance with practiced ease. Tomorrow I'll show you the garden. It's quieter there. Easier to think. I watched him go, unsure whether I felt calmer or more exposed. His words still echoed long after he left the room. People fear strong women when they can't control them. For the first time in years, I wondered if that fear might finally belong to someone else. The next morning, I found Robert in the sitting room reading, or pretending to. A newspaper lay open across his knees, the pages uncreased. "Good morning, Mrs. March," he said. "You move quietly for someone carrying so much thought." "Habit," I replied. "I've learned to tread softly when I'm in someone else's house." "Then consider it yours for now," he said. "Hospitality loses its meaning if it comes with boundaries." I sat opposite him. "Boundaries are what keep people decent." He smiled. "And yet you stayed." "I didn't have much of a choice." "There is always a choice," he said gently. "Most people just dislike the price of freedom." I didn't argue. The truth was uncomfortable enough on its own. He folded the paper carefully. "I have a proposal for you." I stiffened. "If this involves pretending to be your wife again, I'd rather not." He laughed quietly. "No acting this time. There's a charity gala tomorrow evening. The Wilson Foundation sponsors several local programs for visually impaired students. I would like you to come as my guest." I blinked. "Why?" "Because he said you've been made to feel small by people who should have known your worth. I think it is time the world sees you as I do." I stared at him. "And how do you see me as a woman who has been underestimated for too long?" His tone was steady. Not flirtatious, just certain. Still, I felt something stir, part disbelief, part longing. "You barely know me, Robert. I know enough. You're proud, disciplined, and too quick to apologize for existing. That combination deserves a stage." I shook my head. "A gala is not my stage. It's full of people who measure value in money and titles. Then let us change the measurement for one night. I don't have a dress for that kind of event." "Then we will find one," he said. "James can arrange it." I almost laughed. "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple," he replied. "Dignity doesn't need permission. It only needs a chance to be seen." The way he said it left no room for protest, but I tried anyway. "People will ask who I am." "They will," he said. "And you will answer however you like. Friend, colleague, or perhaps someone who reminds me of courage." I folded my hands in my lap. "You're kind, Robert, but I don't want to be someone's project." "You are not a project," he said firmly. "You are a mirror. When people see you, they will remember what grace looks like when it refuses to break." The room went quiet. His words settled in me like warm stone, heavy but strangely grounding. "Tomorrow at 7, he continued. "James will drive us. I'll leave the choice to you, but I hope you'll say yes." I met his gaze, or what I could see of it behind the dark lenses. "You sound certain I will." "I am," he said simply. "Pride and curiosity make loyal companions." I looked down at my hands, still unsure which one of those was leading me. When he rose to leave, he paused at the doorway. "It will not be pity, Evelyn. It will be presence. And you will wear it better than any dress." After he left, I sat alone, the silence heavy with possibilities. His words lingered long after the sound of his footsteps faded. I was reading in the sitting room when I heard footsteps measured deliberate, the sound of someone who already belonged in the house. When the door opened, a woman stepped in tall and composed, with her father's bone structure and none of his softness. "You must be Mrs. March," she said. "I'm Sophia Wilson." Her tone carried neither warmth nor accusation, only calculation. She extended her hand like a test I had not studied for. "Yes," I said, taking it. "Evelyn, I didn't know Robert had a daughter. That's by design," she said, smiling without moving her eyes. "He prefers introductions to happen on his schedule. Behind her, Robert's voice sounded from the hallway. "Sophia, be kind. You arrived early." She turned, a faint smirk appearing. "I learned that from you." When he entered, cane in hand, the room changed temperature. "You found her then," he said. "Found Sophia," repeated, studying me again. "That's an interesting word." I could feel the tension crackling in the air between them, years of unspoken arguments pressed into polite phrases. Robert moved toward his chair. "You came to discuss the foundation, I assume." "I came to meet the woman you've invited to a gala as your guest," she said. "People are already asking questions." Robert gestured toward the sofa. "Then sit. Let them ask." Sophia didn't sit. "You like your surprises. Public, don't you? One day, a wife, the next, a mysterious companion." His expression didn't shift. "Evelyn is my friend." "I'm sure she is," Sophia said, still looking at me. "He's very convincing when he wants to be." I tried to steady my voice. "Convincing about what exactly?" "That depends on the week," she said lightly. "Philanthropy, blindness, redemption. My father has many roles," Sophia Robert warned. She ignored him. "He enjoys performances, especially when there's an audience willing to believe the story. That's enough," he said sharply. The command in his tone startled me. I looked at him, but his face remained calm, composed only. His hand tightened slightly on the cane. "I'm not performing," I said quietly. Sophia's gaze softened for a fraction of a second, then hardened again. "No, I think you believe that." Robert stood, his voice controlled. "You came here to remind me that I'm still your father. Consider it done. Now go home." She hesitated, eyes flicking toward me. "You know he memorizes people's movements, right? Even colors. He could tell you what you're wearing right now, down to the smallest detail." "Sophia," he said again, quieter this time. She turned back to him, voice trembling slightly under her poise. "Just don't make her part of the act, all right?" He didn't answer. The silence stretched. Finally, she exhaled, the steel in her posture, softening into fatigue. "I'll call you tomorrow," she said, and left without waiting for a reply. When the door closed, the house fell still again. Robert lowered himself into his chair, every movement deliberate. "She can be protective." "That's one word for it," I said. "She thinks you're lying to me." "She thinks everyone lies to her," he replied. "That's what happens when people confuse truth with loyalty." I watched him for a long moment. The way his head tilted slightly toward the door told me he was listening for more than sound. He was reading, the air mapping the silence. "Were you angry because she insulted me?" I asked. "Or because she was right?" He smiled faintly. "Both, I suspect. I'm starting to think I've walked into a play without knowing my role." "Then play yourself," he said. "It's the only part worth remembering." He lifted his cane, tapping it lightly against the floor. "Now tell me what you see out that window." I hesitated, unsure if it was a game or a lesson. "The garden," I said. "It's perfect. Everything in its place." He nodded. "That's what Sophia hates most about me. I prefer order to honesty." There was no pride in his voice, only weariness. As I looked at him, the question that had begun forming since her arrival settled deeper in me, not about his sight, but about the truth itself. Maybe blindness wasn't the only disguise in this house. I found Robert alone in the conservatory that afternoon, a thin book open in his hands. He wasn't reading, at least not in any ordinary sense. His fingers rested on the page, unmoving as if he were listening to it. "Good morning," I said quietly. He turned his head toward my voice, smiling. "Evelyn, I was beginning to wonder if I had lost you to the garden." "I'm still here," I said, "though I don't think your roses like me much." "They prefer patience to charm," he replied, standing. "A fair metaphor for most things." James entered, carrying a glass of water and a small plate of biscuits. "Tea will be ready in 10 minutes, sir." "Thank you, James," Robert said. James placed the tray on the edge of the table, bowed slightly. and stepped back. Just as he turned to leave, his sleeve brushed the tablecloth. The glass teetered, one breath from shattering. Robert's hand shot out, precise, effortless. He caught it before it fell, straightened it, and only then reached for his cane. I froze. "Careful," he said to James, his tone easy. "No harm done." James blinked. "Apologies, sir. That was clumsy of me. Not at all," Robert replied, placing the glass back with unshaken grace. "You've saved worse situations than this." James nodded and left, but I kept staring at the water trembling in the glass. When Robert turned toward me again, his smile returned gentle, unbothered. "You were saying I found my voice slower than usual. That was very quick. Reflex," he said. "Old habit." "Reflexes need sight," I murmured. He tilted his head slightly. "You think I saw it fall? I think you reacted before it made a sound." The corner of his mouth lifted the faintest trace of amusement or warning. "I've learned to listen to air. I've never known air to give direction," I said. "Perhaps you simply haven't listened long enough." The air between us felt heavier. He walked toward the window, tracing the frame lightly with his fingertips. "You sound troubled, Evelyn." "Should I not be?" he chuckled. "If I answered that you'd accuse me of manipulation, maybe I'd thank you for honesty." "Honesty is a fragile currency," he said, turning toward me. "It devalues the more often you spend it." I looked at him closely at the way his eyes behind those dark lenses didn't quite rest. They flicked faintly like someone tracking light. "You never miss much, do you?" "I try not to," he said. James returned a moment later with the tea service. "Earl Grey as requested." "Perfect," Robert said. "And please bring Mrs. March's gown to the study this evening. The tailor should have it ready by now." "Yes, sir." When he left again, I turned sharply. "You chose a dress for me." "I did. Blue. It suits you." The word blue hit harder than I expected. I set my cup down slowly. "How would you know that he didn't answer immediately?" "Because I asked for the color of clarity," he said finally. "They sent me that one." "That's poetic," I said, "but you described the dress before I even saw it." He smiled faintly. "Perhaps I remember what blue looks like." His voice was calm, but something inside it trembled, an echo of effort. Maybe guilt. "You move through this house like a man who knows every inch of it," I said. "And you catch things that haven't even fallen yet." "Forgive me if I find that confusing." He turned fully toward me, then the glasses reflecting the pale light. "Do you believe confusion is a crime?" "I believe pretense is," I said softly. The silence that followed felt thick enough to breathe. Finally, he spoke. "If I wanted to deceive you, Evelyn, I'd have chosen easier lies. Ones that flatter. Then what are these defenses?" he said. "I've lived long enough to know people don't handle broken things gently. Sometimes you must appear whole just to survive." The sharpness in his tone softened as he added, "If my blindness makes you uneasy, say so plainly." "It's not your blindness that unsettles me," I said. "It's the possibility that you might see more than you admit." He tilted his head, a gesture so precise it almost answered my thought. "You're perceptive, and that's a dangerous quality in a polite world." I stood restless. "If I'm being tested, at least tell me what the lesson is." He smiled faintly. "There is no test, Evelyn, only curiosity. You remind me of something I lost a habit of asking without fear. And you," I said quietly, "remind me of someone who answers only to stay hidden." For the first time since we'd met, he looked almost uncertain. He reached for his cane but didn't use it. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll attend the gala. Wear the blue dress. I want the world to see you before they try to define you." He started to leave, then paused at the doorway. "And Evelyn," he said softly, "if I see too much, it's only because you've stopped pretending not to be seen." When he was gone, I stared at the glass he'd caught. A single bead of water slid down its side, catching light before disappearing. The motion was small, almost invisible, yet it told me everything I didn't want to believe. The black sedan pulled up to the front of the Whitmore Hotel, and I could already hear the hum of voices spilling through the open glass doors. Robert offered his arm as the driver stepped out to open mine. "Ready?" he asked. "I'm not sure that's the right word," I said. "Then use another," he replied. "But walk in as if you own the air." Inside the ballroom glowed gold and white. Chandeliers scattered light across polished floors, and the murmur of polite laughter filled the space like perfume. Everyone looked rich enough to have opinions that carried weight. I had forgotten that world one built on posture, small smiles, and quiet competition. Robert guided me forward with the ease of a man who belonged. He moved with his cane, but it was clear he did not need it. Every turn, every step he made looked rehearsed. A hostess greeted us. "Mr. Wilson," she said warmly, "we're so glad you could make it." "And this must be Mrs. Evelyn March," Robert said. "My guest and the reason I showed up tonight." I felt a dozen heads turn. Her practiced smile faltered just slightly. "A pleasure, Mrs. March." We entered the room together, and for the first time in years I didn't feel invisible. Robert leaned close. "They will all wonder who you are." "Let them. Are you always this confident?" I asked. He smiled. "No. I'm just practiced at pretending." He was wearing a black tuxedo, crisp and understated. I had never seen a man so self-contained. I wanted to believe it was serenity. Part of me suspected it was armor. We stopped near the orchestra. Waiters moved between tables, the soft clink of glass and silver trailing behind them. People approached Robert with admiration and calculation. He nodded, smiled, said just enough to make them feel seen. I was content to fade slightly behind him until I caught a sound that made my heart stumble. A voice. "Mom, Daniel." I turned. He stood near the far end of the room beside Lauren, both of them dressed in polite affluence. Lauren's hand was on his arm, her nails painted in the color of entitlement. Their faces shock first, then discomfort. Daniel's mouth opened, but no words came. I met his eyes and didn't look away. Lauren recovered first. "Evelyn." Her tone dripped with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" Robert stepped beside me before I could answer. "She's with me," he said evenly. Lauren blinked. "With you?" "Yes. My guest this evening," he said. "Is that surprising?" Daniel finally spoke voice low. "Mom, we didn't know you were back in town." "I wasn't planning to be," I said. "It happened unexpectedly." Lauren's smile was tight enough to snap. "And you came with Robert Wilson." "The Robert Wilson, apparently," I said. Robert adjusted his cuff. "It seems my reputation precedes me," he said lightly. Lauren looked him over clearly, unsure what to make of him. The elegance, the dark glasses, the poised calm. "I see," she said finally. "Well, I suppose congratulations are in order, Evelyn. You always did land on your feet." Her voice carried just enough venom for me to feel it. Robert's tone stayed polite, but it cooled. "It seems she's learned to stand as well." Lauren flushed. Daniel cleared his throat. "Mom, can we talk privately?" "There's nothing private left between us," I said softly. Robert's hand found mine briefly. Not possessive, just steady. "Excuse me," he said to them. "We should be taking our seats." He guided me away, his cane tapping softly against the marble. When we reached the table, I could still feel the tremor in my pulse. "You handled that well," he said. "I didn't say what I wanted to," I replied. "Sometimes silence cuts deeper," he said. I turned to him. "You arranged this, didn't you?" "I didn't arrange their attendance," he said, smiling slightly. "I only knew they would come. People like them always do. They never miss the chance to witness what they think they've destroyed." I stared at him. "You wanted them to see me?" "Yes," he said simply. "You deserve to be seen." The orchestra began to play. Around us applause rose, laughter swelled, champagne flowed. But all I could hear was the quiet between his words, the kind of quiet that hides both intention and truth. He leaned closer. You look magnificent, Evelyn. The blue suits you. The mention of the color twisted in my chest. You've said that before. I meant it both times, he said. Even though you've never seen it. He paused just long enough for me to notice. Not with my eyes, he said, but I know the color of something that doesn't fade. Before I could answer, the host's voice echoed from the microphone. Tonight, we honor Robert Wilson for his continued contributions to the Wilson Foundation for Vision. Applause filled the room. Robert rose, offering me his hand. Come, he whispered. They expect a speech. Me, I whispered back. Both of us, he said. I stood beside him as he approached the stage. The crowd shifted attention, tightening. Robert began to speak, calm, gracious, generous. But at one point, he turned toward me. Sometimes, he said into the microphone, we mistake dependence for kindness. But true kindness is when someone lets you stand beside them, not behind them. I didn't know if he was speaking to them or to me. But when the applause returned, it didn't sound like pity. Across the room, Lauren's face had gone pale. Daniel's gaze had dropped. Robert turned back, his voice low, meant only for me. You see, they remember you now. I nodded, barely breathing. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small under the light. The house was quiet when the phone rang. A single shrill sound that cut through the calm like something wounded. I was in the guest room, still wearing the blue dress from the gala, the hem creased from sitting too long. The night had left a hum in my chest. Too many eyes, too many ghosts. I picked up on the second ring. Evelyn March. Lauren's voice came through, tight and fast. So it's true. You were there with him. Everyone saw. I sank into the edge of the bed. Hello to you too, Lauren. Don't play polite, she snapped. You embarrassed Daniel. You embarrassed all of us. Embarrassed, I said. For standing next to a man at a charity event. You make that sound scandalous. You knew we'd be there, she said. You wanted to make a scene. I didn't plan anything. You came to see a show that wasn't about you, and that's what stung. You've changed, she said. You sound proud of yourself parading around like you're somebody again. I was always somebody, I said quietly. You just stopped seeing it. She exhaled hard, the sound shaking. You think this makes you strong? Using that man to prove a point. He's using you, Evelyn. Everyone knows what kind of man he is. Then let everyone talk, I said. Words are cheaper than grace. Her tone softened, but only slightly. Daniel was humiliated. He didn't deserve that. Neither did I said. But when he watched you leave me on that road, he didn't stop you. So forgive me if my sympathy feels late. You don't understand, she said. We were trying to help you. You were becoming impossible, always judging, always reminding us of how you did everything better. I reminded you of what you didn't want to face, I said. That comfort isn't the same as love, and control isn't the same as care. There was a pause. You're twisting things, she said, but her voice wavered. No, I said. I'm straightening them out. I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. People are talking, Evelyn. They're saying you're living with him now. I'm not living with anyone, I said. I'm finally living with myself. She let out a short, bitter laugh. You think that sounds noble? You're a spectacle. I've been invisible for too long, I said. A little light doesn't scare me anymore. The silence that followed stretched long and thin. Then she said almost softly, Daniel still loves you, you know. He just doesn't know how to handle you when you act like this. Then he'll have to learn, I said. Because I'm done being handled. Evelyn. I cut her off gently. You can't humiliate someone who's already free, Lauren. The line went quiet. Then a click. I held the receiver for a moment longer before setting it down. Outside, the night pressed against the window, dark, steady, unbothered. Somewhere down the hall, I heard Robert's footsteps pause outside my door. He didn't knock. He didn't have to. He just waited long enough for me to know I wasn't alone. And then he moved on, leaving silence behind him, clean, calm, and mine. I waited until morning when the house was still and the air felt honest. Robert was in the conservatory trimming a rose stem with careful precision. The sunlight came through the glass roof, pale and deliberate. "You're not blind," I said. He didn't flinch. "Good morning to you too, Evelyn." "Don't turn this into a game," I said. "Last night at the gala, you looked straight at Daniel before he spoke. You knew where he was standing." He set the scissors down, slow and deliberate. I knew his voice. "You turned before he said a word." He finally faced me. "You've been watching me closely. I've been trying to understand what's real," I said. "And I keep finding cracks." He smiled faintly. "We all have cracks." They let in recognition. "Stop deflecting," I said. "You caught that glass before it fell. You describe colors. You move through this house like a man who knows every inch of it, not just by memory, but by sight." He took off his gloves, folding them neatly. "What would you like me to admit?" "The truth," I said. "All of it." He hesitated just long enough to tell me I was right. Then he exhaled the sound. Half relief, half surrender. "I see more than people think," he said quietly. "Not perfectly, but enough. Shapes, shadows, light. I lost most of my vision 15 years ago. The rest," he tapped his temple, "I let them believe was gone. Why lie? Because blindness is simple," he said. "It lets people ignore questions they don't want to answer. No one asks a blind man what he's hiding." I stepped closer. "And what are you hiding, Robert?" He looked toward the window where the garden shimmered faintly in the light. "My life. My choices. The business. The mistakes, the people I hurt to keep the company afloat. When the lawsuits came, the press wanted a villain. Blindness made me untouchable. Pity is the most effective disguise I ever wore." His calm broke for the first time. The voice that had always sounded sure now trembled around the edges. "I got used to being unseen, Evelyn. It's easier than being hated." I felt the words like a bruise. "You've built this world on pretense. Even the kindness, it's part of the illusion." He shook his head. "No, the kindness is real. You made it real again." "That's not fair," I said. "You can't hand me truth like a favor." He stepped closer, the faintest trace of defiance in his tone. "Would you have stayed if I'd told you the truth I didn't answer?" "I didn't know." He nodded as if that silence was its own confession. "You see, we both live behind something. Mine happens to be darker." I swallowed hard. "You used me." "I needed you," he said simply, "but not the way you think. You reminded me what honesty sounds like." I had forgotten. I turned to leave, but he stopped me with a single line, quiet, heavy. "Don't mistake deception for distance, Evelyn. Sometimes they're the same thing." I stood there feeling the weight of everything he hadn't said, pressing between us. He added softer, "You asked for the truth. There it is, ugly, partial, and alive." When I finally left the conservatory, I could still hear him behind me, moving through the light he wasn't supposed to see. I found Robert in his study that evening, the one room that never seemed to rest. Papers were scattered across the desk, a half-empty glass beside them. He didn't look up when I entered. "You could have told me sooner," I said. He nodded once, still facing the window. "I could have, but you didn't." He took a long breath, then turned toward me. "Because you would have left." "Maybe I would have understood." "No," he said quietly. "You would have pitied me and that Evelyn I cannot bear." The sharpness in his voice softened almost immediately. He set the glass down and leaned against the desk. "Do you want the truth now? I think I've earned it." He gave a small, tired laugh. "That's fair." For a moment, he said nothing. The silence between us felt heavier than anger. Finally, he began. 15 years ago, I was not the man you see. I was the head of a private security firm, contracts, government work, big numbers. It made me powerful. It also made me arrogant." He paced slowly as he spoke the rhythm of confession, steady but brittle. One of our clients, a senator, was caught in a scandal. Money laundering misuse of funds. My company handled his protection, and when the investigation began, they wanted a scapegoat. Someone expendable with enough public image to make the story convincing. That someone was me. I stood very still. You took the fall. I was given a choice, he said. Expose my clients and drag Sophia into a world that would have devoured her or disappear. I chose disappearance. He reached for his glass but didn't drink. The partial vision loss was real, a small accident, nothing heroic. But the rest, the cane, the lenses, the performance, those were deliberate. Blindness turned me into a ghost. The world stopped questioning. It was safer not to be seen, I murmured. He looked at me, then really looked. Exactly. I felt my anger catch up to me sharp and unexpected. You built your life on a lie, Robert. Even your daughter doesn't know who you are. She knows enough, he said, his voice low. She knows I kept her out of it. She thinks I was weak, but weakness saved her. And what about the people who believed in you? He flinched. I didn't ask for belief. I only needed space to breathe. Lies give space, I said. Until they don't. He smiled faintly, bitterly. You sound like the teacher I always imagined meeting, someone who still believes truth can save people. It can, I said. It just costs more than most are willing to pay. He looked down at his hands, the strength in them muted now. I thought I could live unseen. But I've learned something from you, Evelyn. Disappearing doesn't protect you. It erases you. I felt pity, but it was tangled with recognition. We had both hidden, just differently. He met my eyes again. So tell me, he said softly, which is worse, being invisible to others or to yourself? I didn't answer. The question lingered in the space between us, too heavy, too honest, and still searching for light. The morning it happened, I found Sophia in the hallway with her phone pressed to her ear, pacing like someone waiting for a verdict. Her voice was sharp, controlled, but breaking underneath. Take it down, she said. You hear me? Take it down now. When she noticed me, she ended the call and thrust the phone into my hands. On the screen glared a headline in bold, "The Philanthropist Who Faked Blindness." Robert's photo filled the frame, him at a gala, hand on his cane, smile composed. My stomach sank. Who leaked this? Someone inside the foundation, she said, trembling. They have dates, travel records, medical reports. It's everywhere already. Every outlet, every feed. Robert appeared behind her, his calm voice cutting through the panic. Then let it stay there. Sophia turned to him, furious. You can't be serious. We can still control the story, say you had partial recovery. Say it was for privacy. No, he interrupted. No more stories. She stared at him, disbelief shaking her voice. Do you realize what this means? The donors will leave, the board will turn, everything you built gone. Then it's time it goes, he said. I stepped closer. Robert, maybe just a statement. Something simple. He looked at me, eyes bare now. No glasses, no pretense. I've spent 15 years hiding behind what people wanted to see. I won't trade one illusion for another. Sophia's composure cracked. You'll ruin us. Me, the foundation, everything. I already did, he said softly. When I taught you to protect image over truth. The silence that followed felt like a confession on all sides. Finally, Sophia whispered, You're unbelievable. On the contrary, he said, I'm finally believable. She turned and stormed out, the sound of her heels fading like a closing door on old years. Robert sank into a chair, exhaling as if his lungs had been waiting for this collapse. It was bound to happen, he said. Does it hurt? I asked. He smiled faintly. Not as much as pretending. Outside, sirens echoed faintly in the distance, life moving on, uncaring. Robert reached for his cane but didn't use it. He stood without it, steady on his own. Where are you going? I asked. To face them, he said, before they invent a version of me I can't recognize. I watched him walk toward the door, light spilling over the truth that had finally found him. By the third day, the calls had stopped being polite. Sophia slammed another folder onto the desk, her composure unraveling in pieces. They're gone, she said flatly. 3 sponsors in 24 hours. The rest are waiting for your next move before they run too. Robert sat across from her silent. His hands were folded, the picture of calm. Too calm. Do something, she said. Issue a statement, deny it, apologize, anything. He shook his head. No more statements. The truth is out. Let it breathe. Let it breathe. Her voice cracked. Do you have any idea what this will do to me? To the foundation. He looked up at her, unflinching. To us, Sophia. It will happen to us. Her eyes filled fury and fear mixed in equal measure. Don't pretend we're the same. You built this lie. I just inherited the mess. Robert's tone stayed even. I built something to protect you. That's not a lie, it's survival. Protect me, she repeated. From what honesty? He stood leaning on the edge of the desk. From destruction. From a world that would have eaten you alive when I fell. I disappeared so you could have a life untouched by my failures. Then stay gone, she whispered. That would help more than this. The silence that followed hit harder than shouting. She turned to leave but froze when she saw me in the doorway. You're still here, she said bitterly. Yes, I answered. Why? Because running never fixes what's left behind, I said, and because he needs someone who isn't already angry. She laughed once short and sharp. He's fooled you too. Robert's voice softened. No, she's the only one I haven't fooled. Sophia's jaw tightened. You'll regret defending him, Evelyn. He'll drag you down with him. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll know where I stand. She looked at her father one last time. You could have told me. You should have trusted me. I trusted you to have a future, he said. That's not the same thing, she said, and walked out. The door shut quietly behind her. Robert stayed still for a long moment, then pressed his palms against the desk, as if steadying the room itself. I've lost her, he murmured. She's hurt, I said. Anger's just her way of bleeding. He smiled faintly. You always find the gentler word. It's not gentleness, I said. It's what's left when judgment runs out. He turned to me, his face tired but open. You should leave too. When this falls apart, there'll be nothing left but ash and noise. I stepped closer. Then I'll stand in the quiet. He looked at me as if seeing something unexpected. You saw me before anyone else, he said. Before the stories, before the performance. Do you know what that feels like? Yes, I said softly. It feels like being seen for the first time. His hand brushed mine the smallest touch, fragile and certain. Then he said, voice low, maybe this isn't the end after all. Outside, the phones rang, unanswered, the world withdrawing piece by piece. But in that small silence between us, something stayed. The press gathered like vultures around the glass podium, cameras already humming. I stood in the back of the crowded hall beside Sophia, who looked like she hadn't slept. Robert waited behind the curtain, calm as always, his glasses still on his cane beside him, like an old habit he hadn't decided to break. Sophia leaned close. He shouldn't do this, she whispered. He'll destroy what's left. He's not doing it for what's left, I said. He's doing it for what's true. Robert stepped forward when they called his name. The crowd shifted, murmurs blending with the clicking of shutters. He reached the podium without help. Good afternoon, he began, his voice even but quieter than usual. I'm told you want answers. I think you deserve them, someone shouted. Were you ever blind, Mr. Wilson? He nodded slowly. Yes, just not in the way you think. He paused, then removed his dark glasses. The room stilled. The cameras zoomed in. His eyes, clear, sharp, deeply human, met the crowd. I spent 15 years hiding behind this, he said, lifting the glasses. I was blind not in sight, but in courage. I thought deception could protect the people I loved. Instead, it built a prison I had to live inside. He rested the glasses on the podium. If you came here for excuses, I have none. I faked my blindness because I was afraid of failure, of truth, of the world seeing me as flawed. But the worst blindness is pretending you can't see what's wrong. The silence that followed wasn't cruel. It was reverent. I hurt people who believed in me, he continued, but I also learned something I want you to remember. Redemption isn't the absence of sin. It's the choice to stop lying about it. Sophia's hand tightened on mine. She was crying quietly, the fight gone from her face. Robert looked out over the flashing lights. So here I am, he said. No mask, no shield, just a man who finally decided to look. The room erupted not with outrage, but applause, loud, rising, relentless. He turned slightly, his gaze finding me through the sea of cameras. For the first time since I met him, he didn't look like a man performing. He looked free. The letter came 2 weeks after the press conference. I found it tucked beneath the front gate. No return address, just my name in Daniel's familiar handwriting. I sat on the porch before opening it. The first line was short, almost childlike. Mom, I was wrong. I miss you. The words blurred for a moment before I could keep reading. He wrote about seeing the news about how his wife had cried watching Robert's confession. He said it made him realize what honesty looked like when it cost something. He ended with, "If you'll have me, I'd like to come by on Sunday." I went. His house was the same one I had helped him move into years ago, the one I'd been told not to visit anymore. When he opened the door, he looked older, as if regret had been heavy work. "Hi, Mom." "Hi," I said. We stood there too long, strangers in a doorway built for family. Finally, he stepped aside. "You want some coffee? I'll make it," I said automatically, walking past him into the kitchen. He laughed softly. "You never could sit still, and you never could make a decent pot," I said. The tension cracked just enough for breath to come easier. He leaned against the counter watching me. I don't know what to say first. "Try starting with the truth," I said. He nodded. "I was cruel. I thought pushing you away would make Lauren feel secure. I told myself you'd be fine, because you always are. But that day at the bus stop when I saw the pictures online, I realized you weren't fine. You were surviving because of me." I set the coffee pot down. "We both hurt each other, Daniel. You wanted to protect your home. I wanted to remind you where you came from." He looked down. "I don't deserve forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't a reward," I said. "It's what keeps love from dying." He stepped forward, then hesitating only once before hugging me. "I missed you," he whispered. I held him tightly, my hand on the back of his neck like I used to when he was small. "Then let's not miss each other anymore." When I left that afternoon, the air felt lighter. I didn't know if everything was fixed. But when he waved from the porch, I waved back and it felt like home remembered me. The house near Forsyth Park was smaller than either of us expected, but it held enough light for 2 people learning how to start over. The mornings came quietly now. No cameras, no phone calls, no whispers of scandal, just coffee ink and the sound of pages turning. Robert sat by the window most days, his eyes stronger but still cautious. I had started teaching again a few classes each week at the community college. Literature felt different now. The stories about loss and redemption didn't sound like fiction anymore. When I came home that afternoon, he was waiting on the porch, a newspaper folded neatly beside him. "Your students adore you," he said. "They quoted you in the local column again." I smiled. "That's because I bribed them with cookies." He chuckled softly. "That's still influence." I sat next to him. "And how are you feeling today? Honest," he said. "And lighter than I deserve." We watched the sunlight crawl across the pavement. A year ago, that same light had been the start of every lie he lived behind. Now it only made him squint. "You ever think about the old house?" I asked. "Sometimes," he said. "Mostly when I remember how much energy it took to pretend." I nodded. "You used to keep everything in order there, every room, every word." And now he said, smiling faintly, I forget where I left my cane. You've earned the right to forget, I said. He turned to me, his voice low and steady. It's strange, he said, how light never looks the same once you earn it. I looked at him then, no longer the man who hid behind control, but the one who learned to live without it. It's beautiful, I said. He reached for my hand, his fingers rough but warm. So is peace, he said. I didn't think I'd ever have any left. We sat in silence after that, the sound of the park drifting toward us, the laughter of children, the hum of life moving forward. And as the day began to fade, I realized peace doesn't come quietly. It arrives with everything you once lost, asking only that you see it clearly this time. The morning was warm, almost identical to the one a year ago. Robert asked me to take a drive without saying where. His tone carried that calm certainty I'd learned not to fight. We drove past the edge of savannah, the roads growing familiar too quickly. I knew where we were headed long before we stopped. The same bus stop, the same cracked bench, the same patch of sun that had once felt like a punishment. Robert stepped out first. He didn't use his cane anymore, though he still kept it close, a reminder of where truth had finally begun. Why here, I asked, stepping beside him. Because this is where you found me, he said, and where I almost lost myself for good. I looked at the road, quiet now, no cars, no dust, no heat pressing judgment. It feels smaller, I said. That's because you're standing taller, he answered. He walked a few steps forward, then turned to face me. His expression was steady, but there was something unguarded in it, something raw. I thought I brought you here to remember, he said. But that's not it. I brought you here to ask something. I smiled lightly. You already asked too many questions. This one matters. He took a deep breath, then slowly, without ceremony, knelt on the cracked pavement. Evelyn March, he said, voice low but sure. Would you marry a man who finally learned to see? For a moment, I couldn't speak. The wind moved softly through the trees, carrying everything we'd been through in its hush. When I finally found my voice, it trembled with something between laughter and tears. Only if my son walks me down the aisle. He looked up, eyes bright with that strange, quiet joy I'd come to recognize in him, the kind born not from triumph, but survival. Then it settled, he said. I helped him stand. We stood there for a while, hand in hand, at the very place where both our lives had come undone and begun again. A bus passed in the distance, slowing briefly before moving on. He squeezed my hand. Strange, isn't it? The world keeps moving even when you think it's stopped. It has to, I said softly. Otherwise, we'd never know we've healed. He smiled. No, Evelyn. Otherwise, we'd never know we were still alive. And for the first time, I believed him.